In order to create relationships in FileMaker, you first need to determine which tables you're going to have in your database and then create those tables. As you'll see inside of our exercise files, if you go into the 0402 files and under the File, Manage, and Database, you'll see that we've already got 4 tables created inside of our database. It's one table for each entity that we've identified throughout our data modeling exercise. In that exercise, we identified that we had 4 different entities: products, orders, customers, and order line item, and we've created a table for each of those here. By evaluating the one-to-many relationships between each of these tables, we determined that every child table in a one-to-many relationship, which is on the many side, will need to have a foreign key field, and every parent, which is the one in the one-to-many, will need to have a primary key field defined. We look at our relationships here, we see that we've got relationships between products and order line items, and the products are the one and the order line items are the many. So the products table is going to require a primary key field, and the order line item table will require a foreign key field, in this case, the products ID foreign key. We also have a one-to-many relationship between orders and order line items. So orders, being the parent, will need a order ID primary key field, and order line items, being the child, will require a order ID foreign key field. And then finally, the last relationship is between customers and orders, where customers is the one or the parent, so we'll need a customer ID primary key field, and orders acts as the child in this relationship, so it's going to need to have a customer ID foreign key field defined. So this shows the roadmap of the primary and foreign key fields that we need to define. So let's move into FileMaker Pro and define those fields. You define key fields in the same way that you would define any other field. Inside of your Manage Database window, you'll notice that we're looking at the tables. All 4 of our tables are already defined. And by double-clicking on one of these tables, it will take you over to the Fields tab inside the Manage Database window. And we currently don't have any fields defined, but we're going to go ahead and create these. I'm going to start with the Customer table, where we need to define just one field, a primary key field. Before we define any fields in our database, we're going to need to decide what name we're going to give our field. And for key fields, it's good practice to follow some naming conventions so that later you can easily identify the key fields in your database as opposed to some of the other fields that represent attributes. There are various different naming conventions to use. None of them are right or wrong. But the convention that I like to use is to add a suffix to the field name that indicates what type of key that it is. So since these are primary keys, for example, I'd like to use PK as the suffix. I also like to have my key fields appear at the top of my field list when I sort them by field name. So I like to use a prefix of characters that'll have them show up in the top of that sort order. And the ones that work for me are the underscore. So if I type in a single underscore, that will have this field show up at the top of my list. But I'll also have foreign key fields in some tables, and to make sure that primary keys show up above foreign keys, the naming convention I like to use is a double underscore followed by the name of the field. The name of the field that I like to use after the underscore is the name of the table with the letters ID after it, so we know it's a key. So in this case, since we're in the customer table, I'll call it customer ID, and then I'll end it with the PK suffix, indicating that this is a primary key field. I'll also put some comments in here. Customers. And then we'll hit the Create button. Now the field has been created, but there's some additional options that we need to set up to make it act like a primary key field. Selecting the Options button, you'll see that it opens us up to the Auto Enter tab option. And here what we want to do is ensure that the value inside this field is going to be unique and cannot be modified by any users. So first, in the Auto Enter tab, there's an option inside of FileMaker called Serial Number, which means that every time a new record is created, FileMaker will go and allocate a next value based on whatever you have in these 2 fields, and increment that next value by whatever you put in this field here. So we simply just need a number that's unique, so we can leave the default next value 1 increment by 1 in place. And each time FileMaker creates a record, it's going to give it a new number, and it will ensure that those numbers are never duplicate. In addition, we want to make sure that no users change these values, which would mess up all of our relationships between related records. So we'll hit Prohibit Modification of Value during data entry. We hit OK, and now we've got our customer ID primary key field defined to give us a unique value every time a record's created and not allow users to make those changes. If we go back to our ERD, we see that in addition to customers, we also have orders acting as a parent and products. So both of those tables will require a primary key field. So let's click on the drop-down menu to go over to orders, and let's follow the same convention. Double underscore, orders, ID, PK, give it a comment, primary key for orders, hit create, check our options, and simply choose serial number and prohibit during data entry. Pretty simple. And now finally, one last time for products, same thing. ID, PK, primary key for products, choose create, and hit options, selecting serial number and prohibit modification of value during data entry. So now we've got all our primary keys in place, but we're still going to need to define our foreign keys. We see if we look at our entity relationship diagram that the order line item table has 2 foreign keys we need to define, and the order table has 1 foreign key that we need to define. So let's start off with orders. In the order table, we want to define a foreign key for the relationship between customers and orders. And instead of the double underscore in this field, I'm going to do a single underscore because this is going to be a foreign key. And when we name foreign key fields, I like to name them after the parent in the relationship that they're a part of. So in this case, it's a relationship between customers and orders. So I'm going to name this foreign key field FK to indicate that it's a foreign key field. And I'm going to enter into the comment that this is a foreign key field for the customers relationship and hit create. Foreign key fields will have no options because we're going to use other mechanisms to populate these values and therefore create the relationship between the records. So for now, we just want to name it using the single underscore ID and then the FK suffix as our convention. And the only other table that acts as a child in the relationship is the order line item, which is the foreign key field in the orders and order line item relationship. And we hit create, and we have one more as well. The order line item also is a child to products, so we will create the products ID foreign key and hit create. And again, foreign key fields do not need any text options. These values will be populated manually or through some other mechanisms, not by the auto enter options, as in the case of primary keys. Now we have all our key fields. We can hit OK. Once you have your database created or the shell of the database created, you can start by adding things like fields, layouts, and relationships, and all the different things that we'll cover in upcoming movies. Now our next step is to create the links between these related tables now that we have our hooks, otherwise known as keys, already in place.